Ronda Rousey walked up to one of the most secretive fight clubs in the world and was denied entry. The bouncer shook his head. "You're not on the list." Just like that, the woman who had dominated the UFC octagon was treated like an outsider. Before we get into this unbelievable story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what happened next is something you'll want to see, and trust me, you won't want to miss the part that everyone is still talking about. Ronda Rousey, the MMA legend, actress, and fighter whose name alone commands respect, arrived at the entrance of a private fight club one night. The neon lights flickered over the darkened street, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Her presence, bold yet unassuming, immediately caught the attention of the bouncer. She approached with her usual confidence, the kind that makes arenas fall silent and opponents hesitate. But tonight, the rules of this exclusive club would put even her patience to the test. It was meant to be a routine entry, members only, whispered about, a place where only the elite of the fighting world could gain access. But as she stepped up to the gate, the bouncer shook his head, his expression unreadable. "Not tonight," he said simply. Ronda raised an eyebrow, her composure unshaken. She wasn't used to being turned away. She wasn't used to being told no. But tonight, that word no carried a weight she hadn't expected. The crowd nearby, a handful of spectators leaning against the street, waiting for their own chance to enter, began to murmur. Cameras flashed from the club's interior, capturing silhouettes, movement, and the tension building outside. Ronda tried to reason, tried to explain who she was and why being inside the club made sense, if only for a fight, if only for a sparring session. But the bouncer remained firm, repeating the same words. "You can't come in." At that moment, passers-by began to notice. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's Ronda Rousey," one person exclaimed. Phones were raised. Videos were captured. And suddenly, what was meant to be a quiet, private interaction exploded into a public spectacle. People wanted to see how she would respond. They had seen her take hits in the octagon and emerge victorious. But this was different. This wasn't about a match. This was about respect, rules, and a challenge that came without gloves. Ronda's first instinct was shock, subtle but visible. She wasn't used to being denied entry, especially not by someone she considered beneath her in the fighting hierarchy. But shock turned quickly into curiosity. Then curiosity evolved into a plan. She stepped back, her gaze sweeping the crowd, assessing every detail, every opportunity, every way she could turn the situation in her favor. And just as she began to make her move, something happened that no one could have anticipated. A group of club members emerged from the shadows inside, their faces partially obscured. They had been watching the scene unfold, intrigued by the unexpected confrontation outside their sanctuary. Their whispers filled the air. "Do you know who that is? Is she serious? She shouldn't even be out here." But they didn't move to intervene, at least not yet. The tension was mounting. Everyone watching could feel it. The atmosphere outside the club had transformed into something electrifying, charged with anticipation. Ronda didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply waited, exuding the kind of calm confidence that makes even the toughest opponents hesitate. Then, slowly, deliberately, she stepped closer. Cameras and bystanders captured her every movement. The bouncer tensed, the members inside shifted uneasily, and the whispers grew louder. No one wanted to make the first move. Everyone instinctively knew this was no ordinary confrontation. This was Ronda Rousey outside a private fight club, and she didn't need permission to dominate. And then, in a move that stunned everyone, she made her first strike. Not a punch, not a challenge, not even a word, but a statement. A step forward. That subtle gesture carried more power than the most aggressive attack inside the octagon. It was a silent message. She belonged here. She had earned her place. She would not be dismissed. The energy shifted instantly. The bouncer's stance faltered. The crowd gasped. Even some of the members inside the club stepped closer to the entrance, eager to witness what would unfold next. But before she could act further, a voice rang out from inside the club. Firm, authoritative, and dripping with intrigue. "You really think you can just walk in here?" The words were directed at her, but the tone was careful, calculated, challenging without directly provoking. Ronda's eyes narrowed slightly. She knew the moment had escalated beyond a simple denial. This was now about recognition, hierarchy, and respect. And she was ready for it. What happened next was almost cinematic. Ronda's movements were deliberate but subtle. A foot shifted. Her gaze hardened. Her posture radiated dominance. She didn't shout. She didn't push. She simply prepared. The crowd outside leaned forward, phones recording every detail. Everyone instinctively knew that something big was about to happen. And then it happened. A challenge was thrown, one that Ronda wasn't expecting. Not physically, but socially. A member stepped forward from inside, attempting to assert control over the situation. The bouncer hesitated, and that's when Ronda made her move. What she did next shocked everyone. The quiet confidence, the calculated precision, the ability to dominate without striking. It left the crowd speechless. Members whispered among themselves. Passers-by raised their phones higher. Some were so stunned they forgot to breathe. And in that moment, it was clear. Ronda Rousey didn't just belong in this space. She commanded it. But just when it seemed like the confrontation had reached its climax, the story didn't end. The crowd outside was left buzzing. People speculated about the private dynamics inside. Rumors spread about what would happen if she truly challenged the hierarchy of the club. Members exchanged uneasy glances. And for every spectator, one question hung in the air. What happens next? The answer, of course, remains elusive. Inside that private club, conversations continued. Tension simmered. Recognition was negotiated. And the full story, the moment that truly defined the night, remains behind closed doors. But one thing is certain. The scene outside left an indelible impression. Ronda Rousey, denied entry, had turned a simple no into an event that captivated everyone who witnessed it. Those who witnessed it couldn't stop talking about what they had just seen. Every detail was replayed in their minds. The way Ronda's eyes narrowed, the subtle shift in her posture, the silence that seemed louder than any shout. People whispered about her calm confidence, about how she didn't need to raise her voice or throw a punch to make everyone around her take notice. And yet, for all the spectators outside, that was only half the story. Inside the club, the energy was different. The members, used to controlling every situation behind their velvet ropes, suddenly found themselves navigating an unexpected variable. Some exchanged uneasy glances. Others whispered to one another, trying to interpret Ronda's intentions. Every movement she made, even without stepping inside, altered the dynamics of the room. The bouncer, once confident in his authority, now seemed unsure. His every decision measured against the reputation and presence of someone far beyond ordinary. No one could predict what would happen next. Would she return? Would she confront them directly? Or would she simply let the moment pass, leaving an invisible mark that would linger long after? Every possibility was being analyzed, debated, and imagined by everyone present. Yet only Ronda truly knew the answer. The street outside gradually emptied, but the echoes of that night didn't fade. People replayed the encounter in their minds, each retelling adding new layers of drama. Some swore they could still feel the tension in the air, as if Ronda's presence lingered long after she walked away. Others speculated about what discussions were happening behind the closed doors, conversations that could change everything inside the club, yet remained hidden from view. Inside, a quiet calculation was underway. The club's managers, who had once considered themselves untouchable, suddenly realized the situation was far more complex than a simple denial of entry. Every decision they made now carried weight. Every word could shift alliances, and every glance from Ronda outside the entrance had already altered the unspoken hierarchy. It wasn't just about a fight or an ego. It was about respect, control, and understanding who truly commanded the room, even from the threshold. Rumors began to circulate immediately. Those who had witnessed her arrival and departure described the scene in exaggerated detail, turning whispers into near-mythic stories. Social media posts popped up, each more speculative than the last. Some suggested she would return with a challenge. Others claimed she had already won without setting foot inside. The anticipation grew with every passing hour, as if the city itself held its breath, waiting for the next move. And yet, Ronda's silence outside the club was deafening. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten, and she didn't need to. Her calm, measured composure carried more weight than any words or actions could. To those who observed her, it was clear. She was still in control, and what happened next, behind closed doors, would shock everyone far beyond the street outside. Even now, the moment continues to be analyzed. Every nuance of her expression, every calculated step, is dissected by fans and critics alike. But the truth remains locked behind the club's doors. And that's exactly why the story feels unfinished. Why it seems as though there must be a part 2, waiting just around the corner, even though no one has seen it. The tension, the questions, and the possibilities are what keep this story alive. And for those who want the full picture, the full drama, the subtle confrontations, and the moves that made this encounter legendary,